I've told 347 families that their loved ones are safe on Hope's Landing. 347 times I've pulled up the same fabricated database entry, pointed to the same falsified confirmation signals, and watched relief collapse people into chairs across from my desk. The lies come easier now. That's the part that keeps me functional through 16-hour shifts in gateway operations. Not the lying itself, but how simple it's become to speak words I know will shatter if anyone ever learns the truth. My office sits in the administrative wing of the Gateway facility, carved into Antarctic ice shelf 2 kilometers from the portal itself. The walls are modular polymer panels painted the kind of neutral beige that every government installation defaults to when trying to suggest calm competence. My desk holds 3 monitors, a tablet for intake forms, and a single photograph I keep face down in the drawer. Chloe at 15 before everything, grinning at a birthday cake she'd helped bake herself. She went through 73 days ago. First civilian wave, priority boarding because of her age and health markers. The confirmation signal came back clean. Standard biometric verification, location ping, all systems nominal. 3 hours later, Scout Team 4 went through the gateway and found themselves standing on a plane of black glass that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. No structures, no people, no explanation for where 42,000 evacuees had gone. The official position is that Scout Team 4 experienced an equipment malfunction. The official position is that all 42,000 arrived safely at the Hope's Landing primary settlement and are undergoing standard orientation. The official position has been my job to maintain for the past 2 months, and I've gotten proficient at it. Mr. Hendry. The woman in the chair across from my desk is maybe 40, with the kind of exhaustion that comes from weeks in the refugee processing centers. Her intake form says her name is Elena Miles. Her son is 8 years old. He evacuated 14 days ago. I just need to know he's okay. They won't tell us anything in the camps. They say we'll get official confirmation in 6 to 8 weeks, but I can't. She stops, steadies herself. I need to know. I pull up her son's supposed location on my primary monitor, angling it so she can see. The interface shows a residential sector designation, a provisional school enrollment, even a meal plan. None of it real. All of it generated by the algorithm they assigned to create plausible lives for people who may not exist anymore. Timothy arrived safely, I tell her, keeping my voice level and warm. He's in residential sector 7G, which is one of the family-oriented neighborhoods. They've got him enrolled in the primary education program, age-appropriate curriculum, full-day schedule. The transition specialists report he's adjusting well. Elena's shoulders drop. She presses both hands against her face, and I watch her cry with relief while my stomach tries to crawl up into my throat. Can I send him a message? She asks when she can speak again. They said communication would be limited at first, but the relay system is still being calibrated, I say, which is the approved response for this question. We're looking at another 3 to 4 weeks before two-way communication is reliable. But you can file a message in the queue. I'll make sure it's flagged priority. She nods, takes the tablet I offer, starts typing. While she writes, I pull up the scout report from the day Timothy Miles went through the gateway. Scout Team 7. Destination environment. Atmospheric composition nitrogen 71%, oxygen 18%, trace compounds including crystalline particulate. Surface temperature minus 43 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere stable at ground level, but undergoes rapid phase transition upon contact with human respiratory tissue. Team Medic reported severe crystallization of lung tissue in an animal tissue surrogate within 3 minutes. Subsequent analysis attributed the effect to supersaturated crystalline aerosols nucleating on moist mucosa, flash freezing tissue despite nominal ambient conditions. Environment deemed incompatible with human survival. No structures detected, no evacuee presence confirmed. 42,000 people went through that day. Timothy Miles was one of them. I close the report before Elena finishes her message. She hands back the tablet, thanks me 6 times, and leaves my office walking straighter than when she entered. I give myself 30 seconds, then lean over the waste bin beside my desk and vomit. The routine is established now. I rinse my mouth in the small bathroom attached to my office, file Eleanor's inquiry as resolved, and pull up the next appointment. 23 more today. I've learned to space them at 20-minute intervals. Any shorter, and I can't maintain the performance any longer, and the backlog becomes unmanageable. But before the next appointment, I have 11 minutes. I use them the same way I've used every gap in my schedule for the past 73 days. I pull up the classified database. My security clearance is high enough to access scout reports, but not high enough to attend the briefings where they decide what to do with the information. I've memorized the access pathways, learned which queries get flagged for review and which slip through the monitoring protocols. What I'm looking for is pattern. The Gateway has sent scout teams through 198 times since Chloe's wave evacuated. I've logged every destination, every environmental reading, everything they've found on the other side. 14 different configurations in 3 weeks. Yesterday, the scouts found a world where gravity operated in selective pulses, crushing anything that moved while leaving stationary objects untouched. Last week, they found an ocean with no bottom, where the pressure increased to lethal levels within 6 meters of depth, but the surface remained calm and temperate. 2 days before that, they found a forest where the trees grew in accelerated time. Saplings to ancient giants in the span of hours, while everything else remained normal. Nothing repeats. Nothing makes sense. And somewhere in that chaos of destinations, Chloe either exists or doesn't. I cross-reference her evacuation manifest with the timeline of scout reports. Her wave went through at 1400 hours on day 0. The final confirmation signal came at 1403 hours. Scout Team 4 entered at 1700 hours and found the black glass plane. But there's a gap. 3 hours between confirmation and verification. I've requested the intermediate reports, the technical logs, the gateway status readings, anything that might explain what happened in that window. Every request gets denied with the same response, outside scope of position authority. So I map what I can access. I chart destinations by chronological order, by atmospheric composition, by whether the scouts found structures or wilderness or something that doesn't fit either category. I run probability analyses on the rotation pattern, looking for any variable that might predict what configuration comes next. Nothing. Pure chaos, unless someone's controlling it, in which case the pattern exists somewhere I can't see. My next appointment arrives on schedule. I process the inquiry, deliver the lie, watch another person walk away believing the best possible story. Then another. Then another. By hour 6 of my shift, I've spoken to 18 families and vomited twice more. The waste bin liner needs changing. The daily operations briefing starts at 1900 hours. Attendance is mandatory for all senior coordination staff. I take my seat in the conference room, 20 chairs around a table made of the same modular polymer as my office walls, everything designed to be broken down and relocated if the facility ever needs to evacuate. Director Amundsen runs the briefing. She's 63, career logistics officer, the kind of administrator who treats catastrophic planetary evacuation like a particularly complex supply chain problem. She's good at her job. I've never seen her hesitate. Current evacuation total stands at 1.3 million people processed through the gateway, she says, reading from her tablet. 0 casualties, 0 major incidents. Transit efficiency is running at 98.7% of projected capacity. We're ahead of schedule. I speak before I can stop myself. What about scout confirmations? Amundsen looks up. So does everyone else at the table. Elaborate, she says. The evacuee manifests. We're telling people their families have arrived safely, but the scout reports... I stop, choose my words carefully. There are discrepancies between outgoing numbers and confirmed presence on the other side. Amundsen sets down her tablet. Mr. Hendry, your position is Family Reunification Coordinator. That means you coordinate. You process inquiries, you file reports, you maintain database accuracy. Your position is not field analysis. Your position is not scout operations. Your position is not policy review. She pauses. Confirmation is procedural, not practical. We confirm that evacuees have transited the gateway. What happens on the other side is outside your scope. But if they're not outside your scope, the room is silent. I sit back in my chair, and Amundsen continues the briefing like the exchange never happened. We review supply chain status, maintenance schedules, upcoming evacuation waves, everything moving forward on the assumption that the destination matters less than the volume of people we can push through. The briefing ends. I'm halfway to the door when someone touches my elbow. "Walk with me," a woman says quietly. I recognize her. Dr. Meredith Ingram, one of the gateway technicians. Mid-30s, PhD in theoretical physics, transferred here from CERN when the magnetosphere collapsed. I've seen her in the facility, but we've never spoken directly. We walk down the corridor towards the residential wings, far enough from the administrative section that the security cameras are spaced wider apart. "Have you seen Scout Report 19? She asks. "No, I don't have access to anything above standard field observations." "You should get access." She glances back toward the conference room. "It's important, especially for someone in your position." "Why?" "Because it's not just environmental readings and terrain surveys." She stops walking. We're standing in a junction between corridors, nobody nearby, the overhead panels throwing clean white light across her face. "They found something. A structure. Artificial. And inside..." She doesn't finish. Someone rounds the corner ahead, and she immediately shifts to discussing my database protocols, something neutral about file organization. The other person passes. Meredith doesn't return to the previous topic. 2200 hours, she says instead. "Server room 3. Bring your access credentials." Then she walks away, leaving me standing alone in the corridor. I process 11 more inquiries before my shift ends. I tell 11 more families that their loved ones are safe. I memorize the details: names, ages, residential sectors, school enrollments, meal plans, everything that never happened to people who might be dead. At 2200 hours, I'm standing outside server room 3 with my credential card. The door unlocks when I scan it. Inside, the space is narrow and hot, rack-mounted equipment covering 3 walls. Meredith is already there, working at a terminal. "Close the door," she says. I do. She pulls up a file on her screen. Scout Report 19. Classification level 3 above what I'm cleared for. "Read it," she says, stepping aside. The report is 63 pages. I read it standing up. Scout Team 11 entered during Configuration 17. They found a structure rising from flat terrain that extended to the horizon. The structure was massive, estimated 3 kilometers tall, 5 kilometers in diameter. Exterior walls composed of compressed organic material. Analysis pending, but initial readings consistent with carbonized bone matter and crystallized protein structures. No visible entrance at ground level. Team used cutting equipment to breach out a wall. Interior configuration: thousands of identical rooms arranged in nested layers, each room approximately 3 meters square. Each room contained a single human body suspended in ambient medium of unknown composition. Bodies in various stages of physiological restructuring. Preliminary analysis suggests systematic cellular reorganization focused on respiratory, circulatory, and neural systems. Process appears to be ongoing in some subjects, complete in others, failed in 40% of observed cases. Failed cases showed extreme tissue degradation. Successful cases showed profound morphological changes incompatible with baseline human physiology, but consistent with adaptive response to high-variation environmental conditions. Team retreated after surveying 7% of structures accessible interior. Estimated total number of contained individuals, between 200,000 and 300,000. I stopped reading. My vision blurs at the edges. "Keep going," Meredith says. "The appendix." I scroll to the end of the report. Appendix C, partial manifest cross-reference. A list of names pulled from identification markers found in the structure's outer sections. Evacuees from multiple waves, multiple dates. They've matched 63 individuals to outgoing manifests. I scan down the alphabetical list. Hendry, Chloe, age 17. Evacuation date, day 0, wave 1. Identification confirmed via dental records. Status, unknown. I sit down on the floor. The terminal screen stays visible, Meredith standing beside it, and somewhere in my chest something important cracks in half. "I'm sorry," Meredith says, "but you needed to know." I don't trust my voice. I just stare at Chloe's name on the screen, at the word unknown beside it, and try to understand what it means that my daughter might be inside a structure made of compressed human bone, while I've spent 73 days telling people their families are safe. "Why show me this?" I finally ask. "Because you're the only person in coordination who's asking questions," Meredith says. "And because you deserve to know what happened to your daughter. And because..." She pauses. "Because I think you're the kind of person who needs to decide for himself what to do with the truth." I stand up slowly. The room feels too small. The heat from the servers pressing against my skin. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "That's your decision." Meredith closes the file, clears the terminal's access log. "But I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm mapping the gateway configurations. Every destination, every environmental variable, every structure or anomaly. I think there's a pattern. I think someone or something is controlling where people end up. And I think if we can figure out the pattern, we can figure out what happened to your daughter." "Why would you help me?" "Because I sent my brother through 3 weeks ago." Her voice stays calm, but I see her fingers twitch against the terminal edge. "And I don't know where he ended up either." I look at her for a long moment. Then I pull out my tablet, transfer my own mapping data to her terminal. 73 days of cross-referenced reports, timeline analyses, environmental comparisons. Everything I've been building in the 11-minute gaps between lies. "This is what I have so far," I say. Meredith opens the files, scans through them quickly. "You've been tracking chronological patterns, configuration rotation speed. That's good. But you're missing the technical data, power consumption, exotic matter readings, quantum coherence metrics. That's where the real pattern is. Can you access that?" "Already have." She pulls up another screen, overlays my timeline data with her technical readings. "Look, every time the gateway shifts configuration, there's a corresponding spike in exotic matter draw. But the spike intensity varies, and the variation correlates with..." She stops, stares at the screen. "With what?" I ask. "With evacuee volume," she says quietly. "The more people we send through, the faster the configuration cycle. It's not random at all. It's responsive." We stand there in server room 3, surrounded by the heat of equipment routing communications between a dying planet and a lie we've agreed to maintain. And I realize we've just discovered that someone or something on the other side is sorting arrivals, deciding where 42,000 people end up based on variables we can't see, deciding what happened to Chloe. My shift starts again in 6 hours. I'll process 23 more inquiries, tell 23 more families their loved ones are safe. And now I'll do it knowing that every person I send through might end up in a structure made of compressed bone, their bodies reorganized into something that isn't quite human anymore. Or maybe they end up somewhere worse. I walk back to my quarters through empty corridors. The photograph of Chloe stays face down in my desk drawer. I don't need to look at it. I've memorized every detail of her face, her smile, the exact shade of her eyes. Somewhere on the other side of the gateway, she either exists or doesn't. Either survived or didn't. Either stayed human or became something else entirely. And tomorrow I'll smile at another parent and tell them their child is enrolled in provisional schooling, thriving in the community, adjusting well to their new life. The lies come easier now. That's the part I can't forgive. I stop sleeping in consecutive hours. Instead, I take 20-minute breaks between shifts, lying on the bunk in my quarters with my eyes closed while my mind runs through scout report variables, evacuation manifests, configuration timelines. When I do sleep, I dream about Chloe standing in a room with walls made of compressed bone. And when I wake up, I can't remember if she was screaming or just staring at me with the kind of calm that comes after you've stopped hoping for rescue. Meredith meets me in server room 3 every night at 2200 hours. We've fallen into a rhythm. She brings the technical data, I bring the human variables. Gateway power consumption, exotic matter readings, quantum coherence metrics overlaid with evacuee demographics, transit volumes, temporal patterns. We're building a map of something that shouldn't be mappable, looking for logic in a system designed to look random. Pull up day 0, I tell her 6 nights after she showed me Scout Report 19. 84 hours centered on Chloe's transit. I need every configuration recorded during that window. Meredith's fingers move across her terminal. 5 Scout reports populate the screen, each one documenting a different destination. Configuration 14. Day 0 minus 12 hours. Scout Team 2 reports black glass plane extending beyond visual range. Surface absorbs 99.4% of visible light spectrum. No structures, no life signs. Ambient temperature minus 18 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere breathable but compositionally anomalous. Oxygen concentration varies between 12 and 26% in irregular patterns. Team retreated after 6 hours due to navigation equipment failure. That's where Chloe's confirmation signal came from. That empty plane where light goes to die. Configuration 15. Day 0 plus 3 hours. Scout Team 4 reports identical location to Configuration 14. Environmental readings confirm match within 0.2% variance. No evacuees detected. Recommended classification: transit failure or location shift post-arrival. They went to the same place, Meredith says. The configuration held stable for at least 15 hours. But nobody was there when the scouts arrived. I lean closer to the screen. 42,000 people went through during that window. Where did they go? She pulls up the next report. Configuration 16, day 0 plus 18 hours. Scout Team 7 reports massive constructed object rising from flat terrain. Initial analysis suggests artificial origin. Structure composition includes organic materials in compressed crystalline state. Interior accessible but hostile. Temperature 47 degrees Celsius. Humidity 98%. Atmospheric pressure 1.8 times Earth standard. Partial survey completed before team withdrawal. Estimated number of contained individuals, 200,000 to 300,000. The structure: Chloe's name in the identification appendix. Dental records confirming her presence inside walls made from people who went through before her. I force myself to continue reading. Configuration 17, day 0 plus 36 hours. Scout Team 9 reports planetary surface under continuous electrical discharge. Lightning strikes occur at frequency of 3 to 7 per second within survey radius. Atmosphere composition standard but ionized to hazardous levels. Ground surface fused into irregular glass formations, suggesting repeated high-energy events. No structures, no evacuees detected. Team evacuated after atmospheric conditions damaged equipment. Configuration 18, day 0 plus 54 hours. Scout Team 12 reports temperate forest environment. Initial assessment favorable. Breathable atmosphere, moderate temperature, abundant vegetation. Team began detailed survey. At hour 2, equipment began experiencing corrosion at accelerated rate. At hour 4, team members' protective suit breached, resulting in rapid tissue damage consistent with strong alkaline exposure. Vegetation determined to be secreting enzymatic compounds capable of dissolving synthetic and organic materials. Team evacuated. Environment classified as non-viable. Configuration 19, Day 0 plus 72 hours. Scout Team 15 reports visual observation impossible. Team members describe location as recursive or folded. Helmet camera footage shows repeating spatial patterns inconsistent with Euclidean geometry. 3 team members experience severe psychological distress requiring sedation. Mission aborted after 90 minutes. Classification: extreme hazard. No further investigation recommended. 5 destinations. 5 different versions of hell. And somewhere in that rotation, Chloe either survived or became part of the structure, or dissolved in a forest, or got scattered across folded space that broke trained soldiers' minds. There, Meredith says, pointing at the timestamps. See the pattern? 16 to 18 hours between each configuration shift. It's consistent across the entire window. I do the math. If it cycles every 18 hours, that means the structure configuration appears roughly once every 90 hours. Once every 3 3/4 days. Not roughly, within a tight band. She pulls up a broader timeline, 3 months of scout data compressed into a single visualization. Configuration 16. The structure appears every 89 to 91 hours. The variance is minimal, less than 2 hours either direction. I stare at the pattern. It's there, undeniable. A rhythm underlying the apparent chaos. Every 4 days, the gateway opens to the structure. Every 4 days, anyone who goes through during that window ends up inside those walls. The other configurations, I ask. More variation, but still patterned. Configuration 14, your black glass plane, appears second most frequently, every 5 to 6 days. The electrical storm world, the dissolving forest, the recursive space, those rotate less predictably, but they're not random. Something is controlling the sequence. Controlling how? Meredith shakes her head. That's the question. The gateway itself is alien technology. We didn't build it. We just found it buried in Antarctic ice and figured out how to activate it. We don't understand the mechanism, but these readings suggest it's not just a stable portal. It's more like... She pauses, searching for the right words. Like a rotating dial, or a scanner cycling through frequencies. Each configuration might not be a different planet. It might be the same location in different states. Different states of what? Reality, space-time, dimensional phase. Pick your theoretical framework. She pulls up the exotic matter readings, showing the power consumption spikes I'd noticed weeks ago. Every time the gateway shifts, there's an energy signature consistent with massive quantum decoherence events, like it's selecting which version of the destination to connect to. I think about Chloe standing on black glass that absorbs light. Chloe inside the structure. Chloe in 5 different versions of the same place. Her fate determined by which 18-hour window she happened to transit during. If the pattern holds, I say slowly, then the structure configuration came around again 90 hours after day 0. That means another 40,000 people went there 4 days after Chloe did. Correct. And again 4 days after that, and again 4 days after that. Meredith's voice stays clinical, but I see the tension in her jaw. The structure isn't just housing evacuees from one wave, it's collecting them across multiple cycles. However many people we've sent through during those specific windows, they're all ending up in the same place. My terminal chimes, appointment reminder. I have 17 inquiries scheduled for today's shift, starting in 6 minutes. I need to go, I tell Meredith. Tonight, she says. 2200, I'll have the communications intercepts ready. I make it to my office with 90 seconds to spare. The first appointment is already waiting. A man roughly my age, intake form listing him as James Fletcher, searching for his wife Catherine, who evacuated 39 days ago. I pull up her fabricated record, prepare to deliver the standard reassurances, then actually read his form. He's marked 4 separate boxes under additional concerns. That's unusual. Most people only mark 1 or 2. I gesture him in. He sits across from my desk, and I notice his hands are covered in small cuts, the kind you get from repetitive work with paper or sharp edges. Not the smooth hands of someone who spent weeks idle in a refugee camp. "Mr. Fletcher, you're looking for your wife, Catherine." "I know she went through," he says immediately. "I have her evacuation confirmation. Wave 1839 days ago, but the timeline doesn't match what they're telling us." I keep my expression neutral. "What timeline are you referring to?" "Earth's timeline. The official position is we have 6 months before surface radiation reaches lethal levels. But I've been tracking the magnetosphere collapse rate against published solar activity forecasts. The math doesn't work. We have 8 weeks. Maybe 10 if we're lucky." He's right. I've seen the classified projections. The public timeline is cushioned to prevent panic. But he shouldn't have access to that data. "Where did you get the solar forecasts?" I ask. "Published research, peer-reviewed journals from before the collapse. The data's public if you know where to look." He leans forward. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because the evacuation numbers don't match the timeline either. If we only have 8 weeks and we've evacuated 1.3 million people, and Earth's protected population is 41 million. He pauses. "That's all that's left. Everyone who didn't make it to shielded facilities in the first 6 months is already dead. 41 million in underground bunkers and polar stations. That's humanity now. And we can only save approximately 2 million total before the radiation penetrates even the deepest shelters." I don't confirm or deny. I just watch him. "That's about 5%, James continues, "which means either the government is planning to increase transit volume by a factor of 10, which is physically impossible given current gateway capacity, or they're lying about how many people they can save, or both." He pulls out a tablet, sets it on my desk. "The official database says 1.3 million evacuees have arrived safely, but the family inquiry volume doesn't match. There should be roughly 2 million immediate family members searching for those 1.3 million evacuees. Instead, the inquiry rate suggests closer to 4 million people are trying to locate relatives, which means the real evacuation number is higher than reported." I finish quietly. "Or the survival rate is lower." He meets my eyes. "I think people are going through and not arriving. I think the government knows. And I think you know. I should end this conversation. Flag his inquiry for security review. Have him escorted from the facility. Instead, I turn my monitor so he can see Catherine's fabricated record. "According to this," I say, "your wife is safe. Residential Sector 12B. Working in agricultural support. The system shows her as healthy and integrated." James looks at the screen for exactly 3 seconds, then back at me. "You don't believe that," he says. I close the record. We sit in silence for maybe 20 seconds. Enough time for me to make a decision I know will cost me everything eventually. "What do you want from me?" I ask. "The truth, or access to someone who has it. And if I give you that, what do you plan to do?" "Find my wife," James says simply. "Or find out what happened to her. That's all. I'm not trying to expose anything or cause panic. I just need to know." I think about Meredith in server room 3, mapping configurations. I think about Chloe's name in Scout Report 19's appendix, status unknown. I think about 364 families I've lied to so far, each one walking away relieved while their loved ones might be dead or changed or scattered across destinations that break the mind. 2200 hours, I tell him. "Server room 3, bring your data." James nods once, takes his tablet, and leaves without another word. I process 16 more inquiries before my shift ends. 16 more lies delivered with the same practiced warmth. By the time I reach server room 3 that night, my throat is raw from talking. Meredith is already there. So is James, standing near the terminal with the careful stillness of someone who's just seen something that confirmed their worst fears. "I showed him configuration 16, Meredith says to me. "The structure." Catherine went through during that window, James says. His voice hasn't changed, but his fingers are white-knuckled against the edge of the server rack. You knew. When I was in your office, you knew she didn't go to Hope's Landing. I knew she might not have, I correct. The pattern suggests she went to the structure, but I don't know if she's alive or changed or... I stop. There's no gentle way to finish that sentence. Show me everything, James says. We do. All of it. The configuration cycle, the 18-hour pattern, the technical readings that suggest the gateway is selecting destinations rather than malfunctioning. Scout reports from all 19 documented configurations, including the ones where teams found evacuees scattered in pieces or discovered environments so hostile that human tissue began breaking down within minutes. James absorbs it all without speaking. When we finish, he sets his tablet on the terminal beside Meredith's and pulls up his own data. Spreadsheets tracking evacuation waves, solar radiation projections, population distributions across the protected zones. You said approximately 2 million total capacity, he says to me. Is that official? It's in the classified projections, yes. Then they're selecting who gets evacuated based on something other than lottery. He overlays his spreadsheet against our configuration timeline. Look at the demographic distribution. Wave 1, Chloe's wave, was predominantly young, healthy, educated. Wave 18, Catherine's wave, was weighted towards skilled labor, medical professionals, engineers. They're not randomly selecting, they're curating. Meredith leans in, checking his numbers. He's right. The age distribution alone shows clear bias toward reproductive viability, and the configuration windows. She stops. They're timing the waves. They know when the structure appears. They're sending people through during those windows deliberately. To what purpose? I ask. Either they think the structure is the safest destination, James says, or they're sorting people somehow, deciding who goes where based on criteria we can't see. My terminal chimes. Urgent message from Gateway Control, marked Priority 1. I open it. All senior coordination staff report to briefing room immediately. Security clearance required. No exceptions. I have to go, I tell them. Don't leave any trace you were here. The briefing room is full when I arrive. Every senior coordinator, all the department heads, Director Amundsen at the head of the table. The security presence is double what it normally is. We have a situation, Amundsen says without preamble. Intelligence indicates a potential information breach regarding scout operations. All classified reports are being pulled for security review. Effective immediately. Access to anything above standard operational data requires written authorization from my office. She looks directly at me. Mr. Hendry, your database queries have been flagged for unusual patterns. You've been accessing scout reports outside your position's scope. Explain. My mouth goes dry. I was trying to help families locate. You were violating protocol. She cuts me off. Your clearance is being reduced to basic operational only. You are restricted to family coordination duties. No database access beyond evacuee location records. No attendance at classified briefings, no exceptions. She pauses. You're good at your job, Marcus. Don't make me remove you entirely. The meeting continues, but I barely hear it. They're sealing off the information. They know someone's been digging, and they're closing the gaps before the full picture becomes visible. I make it back to my office on autopilot. Meredith is waiting in the corridor outside, far enough from security cameras to talk quietly. They locked me out too, she says. System admin credentials revoked. I can't access anything beyond basic maintenance protocols. James? Escorted off facility grounds 2 hours ago, no reason given. I lean against the wall, feeling the weight of it settle in. We were close to something. Close enough that they noticed and shut us down before we could complete the map. I have one more source, Meredith says quietly. A communication intercept I downloaded yesterday before they locked the systems. It's on an isolated drive in my quarters. We can't access it from any facility terminal, but if you can meet me off-grid, Where? Storage sublevel. Section 7, 2300 hours. No cameras there because of the power routing configuration. She leaves before I can respond. I go into my office, sit at my desk, and stare at the monitor showing my reduced database access. Just location records now. Just enough information to maintain the lie. My next appointment arrives on schedule. An older woman looking for her grandson. I pull up his record, residential sector, school enrollment, meal plan, all fabricated, all perfect. I deliver the reassurances with the same practiced tone and she leaves grateful. 411 families. That's how many lies I've told so far. At 2300 hours, I'm standing in storage sub-level 7 among boxes of equipment and supply pallets. Meredith appears from behind a shelving unit, carrying a small drive. This is a communication between Gateway Control and the United Nations Emergency Council, she says. Sent 6 days ago, heavily encrypted, but I had access to the decryption keys before they locked me out. She plugs the drive into her personal tablet, pulls up the file. It's a technical briefing, dozens of pages of data and recommendations. She scrolls to the executive summary. I read it twice, making sure I understand. The Gateway technicians have identified Configuration 16, the structure, as an anchor point. It appears most frequently, maintains stability longest, and appears to be actively processing arrivals rather than simply depositing them. They estimate it can handle sustained throughput of up to 50,000 individuals per cycle. Current projections allow for evacuation of approximately 2 million people total before Earth's surface becomes uninhabitable. Current global population in protected zones is 41 million. The document explicitly states that maintaining evacuation momentum requires continued narrative consistency about Hope's Landing's safety to prevent panic and social collapse in the remaining population. They're lying about the capacity on purpose. I say quietly. They're lying about everything. Meredith scrolls down to the technical appendix. But here's what they're not lying about. The structure is real, it's stable, and it's the only consistent destination we've found. Everything else is hostile or unpredictable. If they're going to save anyone, it has to be through the structure. Even though we don't know what it does to people. Even though... She closes the file. But there's more. Look at this. She pulls up the raw technical data underlying the configuration pattern. Power readings, quantum coherence metrics, spatial coordinates for each destination. And there, buried in the values, is something I hadn't seen before. The coordinates don't change. Every configuration, the black glass plane, the structure, the electrical storms, the dissolving forest, all 19 documented destinations, they all point to the exact same spatial location. It's not cycling through different planets, Meredith says. It's the same place, the same coordinates, just different versions of it. Different states of reality at the same point in space. That's impossible. She looks at me. The Gateway isn't transporting people to different worlds. It's transporting them to different configurations of one world. And the structure, Configuration 16, that's the base state. That's what the place actually is. Everything else is just variation, like tuning a radio and catching different frequencies. I think about Chloe, about whether she arrived at the base state or got caught in one of the variations. About whether the distinction even matters when the base state involves being processed inside walls made of compressed bone. The anchor point, I say slowly. They're planning to send everyone there, everyone left, 3.2 million people into the structure. It's the only option that isn't immediate death, Meredith says. But they can't tell people what it really is. So they built Hope's Landing, the fictional settlement, the lie that keeps people walking through the Gateway willingly. And Chloe's already there. My voice sounds distant, like it's coming from someone else. If she survived the transit, if she survived whatever the structure does, she's been there for 83 days. Meredith doesn't respond. There's nothing to say. I take the drive, thank her, and walk back to my quarters through corridors that feel narrower than they did this morning. In my office, I pull Chloe's photograph from the drawer and finally look at it properly. 15 years old. Birthday cake. That grin that made me believe everything would be fine. Tomorrow I'll process another 20 inquiries. Tell another 20 lies. And somewhere on the other side of the gateway, in a structure made from the remains of everyone who went through before her, Chloe either exists in some transformed state or doesn't exist at all. The anchor point is where they're sending everyone. The structure is where everyone ends up. And I'm the one who tells their families they're safe. I process 43 inquiries over the next 3 days. 43 families searching for people who might be dead or transformed or scattered across configurations that dissolve their tissue within minutes. I tell every single one of them that their loved ones are safe. And each time I speak the words, I feel something inside me compress a little tighter, like my chest cavity is slowly collapsing inward. On day 4, Scout Team 3 returns through the gateway with someone they weren't supposed to bring back. The emergency alert goes out at 0600 hours. All senior staff to the medical bay immediately. I'm not technically senior staff anymore, not since they reduced my clearance, but nobody stops me when I follow the crowd. The medical bay is chaos. Doctors and technicians surrounding a gurney, and on that gurney is a woman. She's maybe 30, pale in a way that suggests she hasn't seen sunlight in months, and her body is off. Not obviously. She has the right number of limbs, the right basic structure, but there's something about the way she moves that makes my eyes want to slide away from her, like watching someone move underwater, all the rhythms slightly off. Her name is Meryl Price, Director Amundsen tells the assembled staff. She's reading from a tablet. Evacuated on day 14, Wave 2, Scout Team 3 encountered her on the other side during yesterday's mission. She voluntarily returned through the gateway and requested to speak with Gateway Control. I pull up my own tablet, access what's left of my database permissions. Meryl Price, age 31, former epidemiologist with the Centers for Disease Control. Evacuated with the second civilian wave, 57 days ago. According to my system, she's living in Residential Sector 9C on Hope's Landing, working in agricultural research. According to reality, she's lying on a gurney in Antarctica, and the lead physician is staring at her readouts like they've just told him the laws of physics have filed for divorce. Her cellular structure is... He stops, tries again. It's human, but the variation is significant. Respiratory system shows adaptations consistent with processing multiple atmospheric compositions. Circulatory system operates at pressures that should cause immediate cardiovascular failure. Neural architecture. Another pause. We don't have a framework for what her neural architecture is doing. Meryl sits up. The doctors move back instinctively, and I don't blame them. The way she moves is still wrong, still underwater. But there's a precision to it that makes me think of insects or surgical instruments. I need to speak with whoever's in charge, she says. Her voice is normal. Completely, perfectly normal, which somehow makes everything else worse. Amundsen steps forward. I'm Director Amundsen, Gateway Operations. You wanted to make contact. I'm here to explain what the structure does, Meryl says. The intelligence that built it wants you to know. Wants you to understand that this is the only option. The room goes silent. What structure? Amundsen asks, which is the biggest lie I've heard her tell yet, because I know she's read Scout Report 19 just like I have. The one you've been sending people to, Meryl says. Configuration 16, the anchor point, the place where human bodies get broken down and rebuilt into something that can survive here. She looks around the room, making eye contact with each person in turn. When her gaze reaches me, I see that her pupils are wrong too. Not the shape, but the way they dilate. Too fast, too responsive, like they're tracking variables I can't perceive. I'm going to describe the process, Meryl continues, because you need to hear it, because you've been sending people through without understanding, and that's... She pauses, and for the first time, something like emotion crosses her face. That's cruel. Even if it's necessary. Nobody stops her. Amundsen gives a small nod. The structure identifies arrivals through biometric scanning, Merrill says. It determines viability for transformation based on baseline physiology, genetic markers, psychological resilience factors. Viable candidates are moved to processing chambers, rooms about 3 meters square, filled with a suspension medium that supports cellular restructuring. She holds up her left hand. The bones are visible through the skin, not because the skin is translucent, but because somehow I'm seeing both the surface and what's beneath it simultaneously. The medium breaks down existing tissue and rebuilds it using templates derived from analysis of the environment on the other side. The world isn't stable. Atmospheric composition shifts between configurations. Gravity varies. Temperature swings from -40 to +60 Celsius within hours. Time doesn't flow consistently. You can experience days of subjective time while instruments measure minutes or the reverse. How long does the transformation take? Someone asks. 6 weeks on average, some faster, some slower, depending on initial physiology. Merrill lowers her hand. The survival rate is 60%. Those who don't survive the process, whose bodies reject the restructuring or whose neural architecture can't adapt to the new sensory framework. They don't die. They get incorporated into the structure itself. Their cellular material becomes part of the walls, the systems, the infrastructure needed to process the next wave of arrivals. I think about walls made of compressed bone, about Chloe suspended in a chamber, her body being taken apart and rebuilt, with a 60% chance of surviving and a 40% chance of becoming architecture. Why did you come back? Amundsen asks. Because the intelligence wants you to know. It's not malicious. It's the only way to make humanity viable in that environment. The gateway doesn't lead to multiple planets. It leads to one location in different temporal states. A world that exists in flux, being actively terraformed or constructed by something that views human consciousness as raw material. The structure is that intelligence's attempt to create a functional interface between human biology and fluid reality. What intelligence? I ask before I can stop myself. Merrill looks at me again, and this time I see something in her expression that might be recognition, or might be the way a specimen examines a scientist examining it. The first humans who went through, she says quietly. The ones who survived the initial transformations. We didn't just adapt individually, we merged, shared neural architecture, distributed consciousness, collective processing. We're not individuals anymore, not entirely. We're a network, and we built the structure because we understood what needed to be done to save the rest of humanity. The room erupts into questions, but I'm not listening anymore. I'm thinking about Chloe, about whether she merged into this collective or stayed separate, or died and became walls. About whether the distinction matters when the person I knew either doesn't exist anymore, or exists as part of something that includes 10,000 other people's thoughts. The message is simple, Merrill says, cutting through the noise. The structure works. 60% of arrivals survive transformation and can exist in the environment on the other side. The other 40% contribute to expansion, which increases processing capacity for future waves. It's the only viable evacuation plan you have. Earth dies in 6 to 8 weeks. This is humanity's only path forward. She lies back down on the gurney, and the medical staff swarm around her again. Amundsen dismisses everyone except core operations personnel, which no longer includes me. I return to my office and sit at my desk, staring at the photograph of Chloe that I've propped against my monitor. 60% survival rate. 40% mortality. Better odds than staying on Earth, where the survival rate in 8 weeks will be exactly 0. I think about that for 30 seconds before I stand up and walk to Amundsen's office. She's standing at her window, looking out across the ice shelf toward the gateway facility. The portal itself isn't visible from here, but we both know where it is, know what's happening there every 18 hours. You knew, I say. Amundsen doesn't turn around. Suspected. The scout reports suggested transformation, rather than simple habitation. This confirms it. How long have you been sending people to the structure deliberately? Since we identified the pattern, since we understood Configuration 16 was the only stable destination. She finally looks at me. What would you have done, Marcus? Told people the truth? Watched the protected zones collapse into chaos as 41 million people fight for 2 million evacuation slots? They deserve to know what they're walking into. They deserve to survive. That's all that matters now. Amundsen walks to her desk, pulls up files on her terminal. The other configurations, the black glass, the electrical storms, the dissolving forest, those aren't malfunction. That's disposal. The structure only accepts 50,000 people per anchor cycle. We need to evacuate 2 million. The rest get scattered to environments that can't support them. I feel my fingers curl into fists. Random selection, random chance determines who gets transformation and who gets scattered. Not random. The structure scans during transit, selects based on viability markers. We optimize the evacuation lottery to prioritize individuals most likely to survive transformation. Genetic health, psychological resilience, age factors, skill sets useful for adaptation. She meets my eyes. Your daughter was 17, healthy, psychologically stable. She was priority flagged for anchor window transit. She went to the structure. Yes, and she either survived the transformation, or she's dead. Or she's part of the collective intelligence that built it. Amundsen closes her files. Which, based on Merrill Price's testimony, might not be death at all. Might be evolution. I want to hit her. Want to destroy something. Scream. Make her understand what it costs to reduce human extinction to logistics problems and survival percentages. Instead, I just stand there, breathing through the rage until it compresses into something cold and manageable. You're going to keep lying, I say. I'm going to keep evacuating. Amundsen sits down, returns her attention to her terminal like I'm already dismissed. We have 6 weeks before Earth's surface becomes uninhabitable. I can save 2 million people if I maintain operational momentum. Or I can tell the truth, watch the evacuation collapse and save maybe a few 100,000 before civilizational breakdown makes it impossible to move anyone. Your choice, Marcus. Which version of humanity do you want to survive? I don't answer. I just walk out of her office and back toward my own. But I don't make it there because someone grabs my arm in the corridor. James Fletcher. He shouldn't be here. They escorted him off facility grounds 4 days ago. But here he is, pulling me into an empty conference room. And I see he's brought equipment. Cameras, recording devices. A laptop connected to what looks like a satellite uplink. I couldn't stay away, he says. Not after what you showed me. I've been compiling evidence, evacuation manifests, scout reports I accessed before they locked you out, demographic analyses showing the lottery is rigged. I'm broadcasting it. All of it. Every refugee camp on Earth is going to know what you're really sending people into. Catherine was on the secondary priority list, he continues. They sent her during a disposal window, not to the structure, to the electrical storm world, Configuration 17. She didn't get transformation. She got scattered. He pulls up files on his laptop, shows me the evidence he's compiled. It's comprehensive. It's damning. It's everything I've been trying to map for the past 90 days, laid out in documentation that would end the evacuation within hours of going public. I'm giving you a choice, James says. Help me broadcast this or stop me before I do. I look at the equipment, at the evidence, at James standing there with the kind of desperate certainty that comes from having nothing left to lose. I think about Catherine scattered across a world of perpetual lightning strikes, about Chloe suspended in the structure, being taken apart and rebuilt, 60% chance of survival. About 2 million people who might make it through transformation versus 41 million who'll die on Earth in 6 weeks. Security, I say into my facility comm. Conference room 7B. Unauthorized personnel. James stares at me. Marcus. I'm sorry about Catherine, I tell him, and I mean it. But if you broadcast this, the evacuation stops. Billions die. Chloe's transformation becomes meaningless. Everyone who survived the structure, who became part of whatever intelligence is building that world, it all becomes meaningless. They're not surviving, James says. They're being turned into something else. That's not salvation, that's... Security arrives before he finishes. They're efficient, professional, completely unconcerned with James's shouting as they confiscate his equipment and remove him from the facility. He's screaming by the end, calling me a murderer, calling me complicit, promising he'll find another way to expose the truth. He's probably right about all of it. The security officer files the incident report, asks if I need medical attention. I tell him I'm fine, which is the 467th lie I've told since taking this position. He leaves. I stand alone in the conference room, looking at the empty space where James was standing, and I feel the last piece of whatever held me together crack cleanly in half. I walk back to Amundsen's office. She's still at her terminal, probably hasn't moved in the 15 minutes since I left. I want to join Scout Team 3's next mission, I tell her. She looks up. Why? Because I need to see the structure. I need to know if Chloe survived. I pause. And because if I keep processing inquiries while knowing what I know, I'm going to break completely. At least on the other side, the lies stop mattering. Amundsen studies me for a long moment. Then she pulls up the Scout mission schedule. Next anchor window opens in 48 hours, she says. Configuration 16. Scout Team 3 has authorization for extended survey of the structure's interior. I can add you to the manifest. She looks at me again. You understand that if you go through, there's no guarantee you'll come back. The transformation isn't optional if you stay too long. The structure will identify you as viable and begin processing. I understand. And you're prepared for what you might find. Your daughter dead or transformed, or part of a collective intelligence that doesn't remember being human. I'm already prepared for those options, I say. I've been living with them for 90 days. Amundsen adds my name to the Scout manifest, sends the authorization to Team Command. 48 hours. Report to staging bay at 0500 on mission day. And Marcus? She pauses. If you find her, if she survived, she won't be the person you remember. Merrill made that clear. The transformation changes everything. I know, I say. But I don't know. Not really. I won't know until I walk through the gateway and see for myself what Chloe has become, or what she's building, or whether she exists at all anymore. I have 48 hours before I stop being the person who lies to families and become the person who walks into the truth. 48 hours to process inquiries, maintain the fiction, send more people toward transformation or disposal while knowing exactly what I'm doing. I return to my office. My next appointment is waiting. A young woman searching for her brother, evacuated 32 days ago. I pull up his fabricated record, prepare to deliver the reassurances, and realize I can't remember his name, even though it's displayed on my screen. He's safe, I tell her, and the words come automatically now, muscle memory divorced from thought. Residential Sector 4J. He's enrolled in technical training. The reports say he's adjusting well. She cries with relief. I file the inquiry as resolved and call in the next appointment. The staging bay at 0500 hours is colder than the rest of the facility, closer to the surface, closer to the gateway itself. Scout Team 3 is already suited up. 6 people in environmental gear designed to handle temperature swings, atmospheric variations, and exposure to materials that dissolve standard protective equipment. I get fitted for my own suit, and the technician running the equipment check doesn't make eye contact while she works. She knows I'm not really here for reconnaissance. Everyone knows. You don't volunteer for Gateway Transit unless you're looking for someone who went through already. Captain Rebecca Moss runs the team, a former Marine who transferred to scout operations after the magnetosphere collapse made traditional military structure obsolete. She briefs us while we run final systems checks. Configuration 16 confirmed stable as of 0430, she says. Anchor window opened 20 minutes ago, estimated duration 18 hours. Our mission is extended interior survey of the structure. Map layout, document processing systems, attempt contact with any conscious transformed individuals. Duration 4 hours maximum before mandatory return. Anyone experiencing transformation symptoms gets pulled immediately. What are transformation symptoms? I ask. Moss looks at me. Visual distortions, temporal perception shifts, involuntary motor control. If you start seeing through your own hand or losing track of whether you've been standing for seconds or hours, you tell me immediately. I nod. The suit seals activate with a sound like compressed air releasing through rubber gaskets. Not a hiss, more like a cough that travels through the material itself. We walk to the gateway. It sits in the center of a chamber carved from ice and bedrock, 5 stories tall and perfectly circular, made from material that looks like obsidian but reflects light. The aliens who built it left no instructions, no interface, no explanation. Humanity just figured out how to activate it through trial and error, and now we're betting our species' survival on technology we don't understand, leading to destinations we can't predict. The portal itself is a vertical circle of absolute black, not darkness, absence. Like someone cut a hole in reality and all the light falls through into somewhere else. Transit in 30 seconds, Moss announces. Stay together on the other side. Don't touch anything until we've confirmed atmospheric compatibility. If the configuration shifts while we're through, we retreat immediately to the emergence point and hope it shifts back before our oxygen runs out. That's happened before? I ask. Once. Scout Team 9. They waited 47 minutes breathing bottled air before the gateway reconnected to the anchor point. She doesn't mention what would have happened if the wait had been longer. We step through. Transit is instantaneous and eternal. I experience falling and standing still simultaneously, feel my body stretched across distance that doesn't correspond to any geometric principle I understand. And then I'm on the other side and the sky is wrong. It's not any particular color. It shifts between states, blue to green to something that might be ultraviolet but registers as a sound instead of a visual, then back to blue but a different blue than before. The shifts happen every few seconds and watching them makes my eyes water. The ground is flat and extends to the horizon in every direction. Dark earth, no vegetation, no visible features except the structure. It rises 3 kilometers ahead of us, tall enough that its upper sections disappear into the shifting sky. Walls made of compressed organic material that used to be human tissue, crystallized and fused into something that looks like bone but isn't quite. The surface is smooth, except where you can see individual cellular patterns embedded in the structure, preserved in the compression like fossils in limestone. Atmospheric reading nominal, someone announces. Oxygen 18%, nitrogen 74%, trace compounds, breathable with suit supplementation. We walk toward the structure. The distance feels wrong. It should take 20 minutes to cover 3 kilometers, but we're there in what feels like 5 minutes or maybe an hour. Time isn't stable here. I check my suit chronometer and it shows 7 minutes elapsed, but my internal sense insists it's been longer. Transformation symptom. I make note of it but don't report yet. The structure has no visible entrance at ground level, just seamless walls stretching up and away. Moss pulls cutting equipment from her pack, industrial laser designed to breach reinforced barriers. She sets it against the wall and activates it. The material parts like skin, edges pulling back to reveal interior space. We enter single file. Inside is worse than the scout report suggested. The walls are the same compressed organic matter, but here you can see more detail. Individual cell structures, neural patterns, fragments of what might be faces or hands embedded in the architecture. The rooms are arranged in layers, each chamber about 3 meters square, stacked in configurations that violate standard geometry. I see a room above me that should be impossible given the room I'm standing in, but both exist simultaneously. Some chambers are occupied, bodies suspended in clear medium, floating motionless while their cellular structure visibly rewrites itself. I watch one person's respiratory system dissolve and rebuild over the course of 30 seconds, lungs collapsing, new tissue growing from the diaphragm upward, bronchi branching in patterns too complex for standard human anatomy. That's active transformation, Moss says quietly. Survival probability still uncertain until completion. Other chambers hold bodies that didn't survive. Tissue breaking down, being absorbed into the walls, contributing their cellular material to the structure's expansion. I count 17 failed transformations in the first section we survey. We need to find the identification records, I tell Moss. The scout report said they're located in the outer sections. She nods, consults her mapping equipment. East corridor, 70 meters. Stay close. We navigate through passages that curve in directions that shouldn't exist. My suit chronometer shows 14 minutes elapsed. My internal sense insists it's been over an hour. The temporal distortion is increasing. The identification chamber is larger than the transformation rooms, walls covered in crystalline displays showing names, dates, status indicators. Thousands of entries. I scan through them, looking for one specific name. Hendry, Chloe. Age, 17. Transit date, day 0, wave 1. Transformation completion, day 42. Integration, successful. Current designation, collective node 7. She survived. She completed the transformation. She's alive, or something is alive that used to be her, and she's designated as part of something called collective node 7. Where's node 7? I ask Moss. She checks her map. Deep core. The structure's central processing area, that's... She pauses. That's where the collective intelligence operates, where the transformed individuals who achieved full integration maintain the systems. I need to go there. Marcus, that's not part of the mission parameters. The core sections are unstable, the temporal distortion gets extreme. And if the collective decides you're a threat, I don't care about the mission parameters. I came here to find my daughter. Moss looks at me for a long moment, then at her team. You four continue the survey. Document everything you can. I'll escort Hendry to Node 7. We meet back at the emergence point in 90 minutes maximum. We descend through passages that spiral downward in ways that make my inner ear protest. The walls here are different. Not just compressed organic matter, but something living. Surfaces that pulse with rhythms that might be circulation, or might be information transfer. The temporal distortion increases with each level. My chronometer shows 23 minutes elapsed. My body insists I've been walking for 3 hours. Then we reach the core. It's not a room. It's a space that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously, extending in directions my eyes can't properly track. Forms move through it, humanoid but fundamentally altered, bodies that shift between states, limbs that are there and not there, faces that flicker between individual features and collective uniformity. One of them approaches. She has Chloe's eyes. The rest is changed, body taller, proportions adjusted, skin that seems to exist in multiple textures simultaneously, but the eyes are the same green I remember. "Dad," she says, and her voice has harmonics underneath it, other voices speaking in unison. "I knew you'd come eventually." I can't speak. I just stare at what my daughter has become. "I'm still me," Chloe continues, "but I'm also not just me anymore. The transformation didn't erase who I was, it expanded it. I remember being your daughter. I remember our apartment in Chicago, remember the birthday cake you helped me make, remember being scared when I went through the gateway. But I also remember being 6,843 other people. Their memories, their skills, their perspectives. We're all here, together. maintaining the structure. "What is this place?" I manage to ask. "Survival," Chloe says. "The world on the other side of the gateway isn't stable. It exists in flux, shifting between configurations based on variables we still don't fully understand. Early arrivals, Wave 1, my wave. We went through during a transition state. The environment was hostile, changing too fast for unmodified human biology. Most of us died." She gestures around the core, and I see other forms moving through the space. All of them used to be human. All of them are something else now. "But some of us adapted," Chloe continues. "The transformation wasn't intentional at first. It was an emergency response. Our bodies trying to survive conditions that should have killed us. We merged because individual consciousness couldn't process the sensory input, couldn't track the temporal shifts. Together, as a collective, we became the structure. Grew it from our own transformed tissue, designed it to process additional arrivals because we understood what needed to happen to make humanity viable here." She looks at me with eyes that are Chloe's but also 6,842 other people's. "The gateway doesn't malfunction, Dad. We control it. We select which configuration connects based on biometric scans during transit." The implications hit me like physical impact. "You're sorting people, deciding who gets transformation and who gets disposal." "We're doing triage," Chloe says, and there's no emotion in her voice. Not because she doesn't care, but because the collective has processed this decision through 6,843 different ethical frameworks and accepted the conclusion. The structure can process 50,000 people per cycle. Earth's population is 41 million in protected zones. We have 6 weeks before surface conditions become lethal. We can save 2 million total if we maintain current evacuation rates. The other configurations, the electrical storms, the dissolving forest, environments incompatible with human survival. We send people there who won't survive transformation. Genetic markers indicating poor adaptive capacity. Psychological profiles showing high probability of consciousness rejection during merger. Age factors limiting physiological plasticity. She pauses. "It's brutal. But the alternative is everyone dies on Earth. This way, 2 million survive. 3.2 million become something new, something capable of existing in flux reality." I think about James Fletcher, about Catherine scattered across a world of perpetual lightning, about Eleanor Miles crying with relief while her 8-year-old son's lungs crystallized in toxic atmosphere. "Dad, there's no version of this where everyone survives. Earth is dying. The gateway can't transport fast enough to evacuate 41 million people before the magnetosphere collapses completely. Someone has to choose who lives. We're making that choice based on who has the best chance of surviving transformation." She moves closer, and I see her body flicker between states, solid, then partially transparent, then solid again but in a slightly different configuration. "You've been flagged as viable," she says. "Your genetic markers, psychological profile, age factors, all optimal for transformation. You could survive the process, join us, exist here with me, with everyone else who made it through. You wouldn't just be my father anymore. You'd be part of the collective, part of what we're building. And if I refuse, then you return to Earth, continue processing inquiries, send more people through while knowing exactly what you're sending them to." Chloe's expression doesn't change, but something in her eyes softens. "I still love you, Dad. All 6,843 of us who used to be me. We all love you. But love means something different now. It's data, connection, recognition of past relationship preserved in collective memory, not emotion, not the way you remember. I look at my daughter who isn't entirely my daughter anymore, standing in a space that shouldn't exist, offering me transformation into something that would let me survive but wouldn't let me stay human. How long do I have to decide? Your suit chronometer shows 37 minutes elapsed. You're experiencing temporal distortion. You've actually been here 90 minutes. If you stay longer than another hour, the structure will begin processing you automatically. you'll lose the choice. I think about returning to Earth, about sitting at my desk, pulling up fabricated records, telling families their loved ones are safe while knowing some went to transformation and some went to disposal, and all of them stopped being the people their families remember. I think about joining Chloe in the collective, about becoming part of the intelligence that sorts arrivals, that maintains the necessary brutality of deciding who gets saved and who gets scattered. Both choices are unbearable. Both choices require living with what humanity has become. I'm not staying, I tell Chloe. Her expression doesn't change, but I see something flicker in her eyes. Disappointment or relief or recognition that this was always the most likely outcome, processed through 6,843 different perspectives and accepted. I understand, she says. Someone needs to maintain the lie on Earth. Someone who knows the truth but tells the story anyway. That's you, Dad. That's your survival. It's not survival, it's damnation. It's both, Chloe says. Everything is both now. She guides me back through the passages, through the core's geometry, and up through the structure's outer sections. My temporal perception has degraded completely. I can't tell if the journey takes minutes or hours. My suit chronometer is useless, cycling through numbers that don't correlate to my experience. We reach the breach point where Moss's team cut through. Scout Team 3 is already there, waiting at the emergence point marked by equipment. Moss sees me and checks her chronometer. 2 hours, 53 minutes, she says. You're cutting it close. We need to transit back before the configuration shifts. I look at Chloe one more time. She's standing at the edge of the breach, her body flickering between states. And she's my daughter and 6,842 other people, and something entirely new all at once. Will I see you again? I ask. Every time someone you send through arrives during an anchor window, Chloe says. Every transformation we process. We'll know you sent them to us. We'll remember you sent them to survive. Then Moss is pulling me toward the gateway emergence point, and we're stepping through, and transit is falling and standing still again. And then I'm back in Antarctica in the staging bay with ice walls and normal chronometer readings and Earth dying 73 meters above my head. The debrief takes 4 hours. I report what I saw, the structure, the collective, the confirmation that transformation works, but changes people fundamentally. I don't tell them about Chloe. That information is mine, and I'm not giving it to Amundsen to turn into another data point in her evacuation logistics. They clear me for return to duty, reduced psychological eval because they need me back processing inquiries. The backlog has grown to 317 families while I was gone. I return to my office. The photograph of Chloe is still propped against my monitor, birthday cake and grin and 15 years old. I look at it for exactly 10 seconds, then put it back in the drawer face down. My first appointment is scheduled for 1400 hours. A father looking for his 12-year-old daughter, evacuated 48 days ago during what I now know was a disposal window. Configuration 11. The world where gravity operated in selective pulses. She's dead. Her body was crushed when she moved at the wrong time in the wrong place. I pull up her fabricated record. Residential Sector 3F. Enrolled in provisional education. Adjustment proceeding normally. Your daughter is safe, I tell him, and my voice is warm, professionally reassuring. The reports show she's doing well, making friends in her residential block. The transition specialists say she's adapting to the new environment better than expected. He cries with relief, thanks me 6 times, leaves my office walking straighter than when he entered. I file the inquiry as resolved, call in the next appointment. A mother searching for her son, a wife searching for her husband, a grandmother searching for her entire extended family. I process them all, deliver the lies, watch them walk away believing the story I've constructed. By the end of the day, I've processed 23 inquiries, 23 lies. Some of those people went to the structure during anchor windows. They might survive, might transform, Might become part of the collective that includes Chloe. Others went to disposal configurations. They're already dead, their families just don't know it yet. I file the last report and sit in my office after hours, alone, staring at the blank monitor. Tomorrow I'll process 30 more inquiries. Day after that, 30 more. I'll maintain the fiction of Hope's Landing, the lie about safe arrival, the story that lets 2 million people walk through the gateway willingly, while 38 million others die on Earth believing they simply lost the lottery. I'll search the manifests for patterns. Flag families I think deserve the chance at transformation by quietly adjusting intake timestamps that nudge them into anchor windows, knowing that means someone else gets disposal. I'll play God in 20-minute increments, deciding who gets lied to about salvation and who gets lied to about death. Chloe was right. Someone needs to maintain the lie with full knowledge of its weight. Someone who remembers what it costs. Someone who can look families in the eye and speak the words that both save and damn their loved ones. That's my survival now. That's what I chose when I walked back through the gateway instead of staying in the structure.